Hello, seniors. Let me tell you about a conversation I had not long ago. A gentleman in his late 60s sat across from me, holding a notebook. In it, he had written down everything he'd been doing for the past 6 months. Morning walks, no smoking, hardly any alcohol. He'd cut back on salt so much that food barely had taste anymore. He looked at me and said, "I did everything right, so why are my numbers still high?" And I could see it in his face. Not just frustration, but doubt. Doubt in his body, doubt in himself. If that sounds like you, I want you to hear this clearly. High blood pressure does not automatically mean you failed. It does not mean you're careless, and it certainly does not mean your body is broken. Some of the most disciplined, health-conscious patients I see are the ones who feel the most confused. They follow the rules, they eat well, they move their bodies, they avoid obvious triggers. And yet, when we wrap that cuff around their arm, the numbers are still stubbornly elevated. Not just once, not just during stress, but consistently. And that's when the discouragement creeps in. Because most people were given a very simple equation. Do the right things, and the numbers will come down. So when the numbers don't come down, the mind starts searching for blame. What am I missing? Is this just aging? Is my body working against me? Let me explain something that changes everything once you understand it. Blood pressure is not controlled by willpower alone. It's controlled by signals inside your body. And when certain signals stay switched on for too long, your body will not cooperate, no matter how healthy you look on the outside. Most people were taught that high blood pressure equals too much salt. So naturally, they attack salt. They throw out the shaker. They avoid processed foods. They check labels obsessively. And yes, salt does matter. But here's what I see every single week. Some people cut sodium and their blood pressure improves dramatically. Others cut sodium just as aggressively, and almost nothing changes. Why? Because for many adults, especially over 50 or 60, blood pressure is often less about salt and more about hormones. And the hormone I'm talking about is insulin. Now, most people hear the word insulin and immediately think of diabetes. But insulin does far more than regulate blood sugar. It plays a powerful role in blood pressure regulation. Every time insulin rises in your body, it sends out 3 important messages. First, it tells your kidneys, hold on to sodium. Second, it tells your nervous system, stay slightly activated. Third, it signals your blood vessels. Don't fully relax just yet. In short bursts, that's completely normal. Insulin is supposed to rise after a meal, do its job, and then fall back down. The problem is not insulin itself. The problem is when insulin never gets the chance to fall. Let me walk you through what I see as a very common, very well-intentioned day. Breakfast in the morning, a small mid-morning snack. Lunch, an afternoon snack. Dinner, maybe something light in the evening, perhaps yogurt, fruit, or even a healthy smoothie. None of those foods are necessarily bad. In fact, many of them might be excellent choices. But physiologically, every single eating event triggers insulin. When meals and snacks are spaced too closely together, insulin doesn't rise and fall the way it's designed to. Instead of moving in waves, it stays elevated, all day long. This creates something subtle. It's not diabetes, it's not obesity. It may not even show up clearly on routine lab tests, but insulin is just high enough for just long enough to start affecting blood pressure. And this is where your kidneys come into the story. Your kidneys are incredibly intelligent organs, but they don't respond to your intentions. They respond to hormonal signals, and insulin is one of the loudest signals they listen to. When insulin stays elevated, your kidneys interpret that as a command to retain sodium. Not briefly, not occasionally, but consistently. So even if you're eating less salt than ever before, your kidneys may still be holding on to sodium because the hormonal signal telling them to release it never arrives. Let me give you an analogy I often use. Imagine your bloodstream as a highway. Sodium is the number of cars on that highway. Your kidneys are the exit ramps that allow cars to leave. Now, imagine insulin as the traffic controller that controls those exits. Cutting salt is like reducing the number of cars entering the highway. That helps, but if the exits remain partially closed, traffic still builds up. Chronic insulin elevation keeps those exits from fully opening. So even with fewer cars coming in, congestion develops. That congestion, that fluid retention, that vascular tension is what shows up as higher blood pressure. This also explains something many people notice but don't understand. My blood pressure is highest in the morning. Often, the cause isn't stress, it's timing. Late-night eating, even healthy food, can keep insulin elevated overnight. While you're sleeping, your kidneys remain in sodium retention mode. Your nervous system doesn't fully downshift. Your blood vessels don't get their full recovery window. You wake up already behind. And here's what makes this even more confusing. Some of the people most affected by this look extremely healthy. They're not overweight, they're active, they may even be considered fit. But here's a truth that doesn't get talked about enough. Normal weight does not always mean metabolically healthy. There are two main types of fat in the body: subcutaneous fat, the fat under the skin, and visceral fat, the fat packed around your internal organs, especially the liver. Visceral fat is metabolically active. It interferes with insulin signaling. It pushes insulin levels higher throughout the day. And here's the critical point. You can be slim and still carry excess visceral fat. When that happens, your pancreas must release more insulin just to keep blood sugar looking normal on paper. So your labs may look fine, your weight may look fine, but insulin remains elevated. And we circle right back to blood pressure. Kidneys hold sodium. The nervous system stays slightly revved. Blood vessels lose some of their flexibility. Over time, this nudges blood pressure upward, slowly, persistently. So when someone says, "I'm doing everything right, but my numbers won't budge," I believe them, because the issue is not discipline, it's physiology. Let me say something very clearly. One of the most common mistakes keeping blood pressure elevated in otherwise healthy people is constant feeding. Not overeating, not junk food, not laziness, but never allowing insulin to truly return to baseline. I see this in three main patterns. The first is grazing all day, eating every 2 to 3 hours. This was once marketed as boosting metabolism, but what it really does for many people is keep insulin switched on from morning until night. The body never enters a true low insulin state. The second pattern is liquid calories. Smoothies, protein shakes, juice. Even the healthiest drinks spike insulin quickly because they're absorbed rapidly. And because they don't create strong fullness signals, they often get added on top of meals rather than replacing them. The third, and perhaps most powerful, is late-night eating. Eating close to bedtime keeps insulin elevated during the very hours your body is supposed to repair and reset. Over time, that shifts your blood pressure baseline higher. Now, notice something important. This is not primarily about what you're eating. It's about how often you're eating. And the solution is not extreme dieting. You don't need keto. You don't need multi-day fasts. You don't need perfection. You need insulin-low windows. That means creating stretches of time when your body is not digesting and insulin can genuinely fall. Simple examples. Stop snacking between meals. Allow 4 to 5 hours between meals when possible. Finish dinner earlier. Avoid late-night food. Compress your eating into a 10 to 12-hour window. When insulin falls, a cascade of positive changes happens automatically. The kidneys release retained sodium. Blood volume normalizes. The nervous system calms. blood vessels regain flexibility. And often, blood pressure begins to move in the right direction within days to weeks. High blood pressure is not just a number, it's a signal of chronic mechanical stress on the heart, brain, kidneys, and blood vessels. When you address the underlying signal, chronic insulin elevation, you're not just lowering a reading on a monitor, you're improving your entire internal environment. You're giving your body the chance to work with you instead of against you. And that's what I want for you. Not fear, not confusion, but clarity. Because once you understand what's really driving the numbers, you stop blaming yourself and you start making changes that actually move the needle. And in the next part, I want to walk you through the 3 most effective exercises I recommend in clinic that help lower blood pressure naturally, not by forcing it down, but by improving the same internal signals we talked about today. Because when you combine smarter timing with the right kind of movement, that's when the real transformation happens.